It's time to try something new. As you guys know, I'm big in the e-commerce world. I've been selling on eBay for years, and I've also used plenty of different platforms to help me sell other types of items online. But today I wanted to try something a little bit different. One of the big trends going around the side hustle flipping space has been reselling furniture. And this was an idea that really caught my attention, as I kind of like construction and building things. I have a few tools, and it felt like something that I would actually be able to get done. Now I should clarify, there's a couple ways of reselling furniture. The one way is that you simply find a piece, for example, on a marketplace listing or maybe at an auction, you purchase it, and then you maybe just clean it up a little bit and resell it. But there's another more complex approach, which is kind of taking an old piece of furniture and making it into something new. That could be refinishing it with a new coat of paint, that could be staining it or adding some new hardware, and then ideally raising the value of that item so then you can get more money for it. And this was the approach that I decided to go for. So I decided that I didn't want to pay anything for this furniture, as to kind of eliminate any risk that there would be in terms of how much money we can make with this project, and that's kind of what I did. Now there's only really a few ways to do that. The one way is that you could simply just go on the Kijiji free section and keep scrolling until you find something that you like, or the other option, which is my favorite, is to just drive around until you see some furniture on the side of the road that somebody's getting rid of. Now after a couple days of looking, I was able to locate a couple pieces of furniture. Somebody was throwing out a whole bunch of stuff on the side of the road, and in there was 2 dressers and a shelf, part of a bedroom set that looked pretty dilapidated and old. But I decided to load them in my car and see if we could go ahead and work on these and potentially flip them for some money. So I went ahead, drove over, picked up as many as I could in my car. I actually got the shelf and a bunch of the dresser drawers in initially, and then I had to go back for a second run to pick up the actual dressers themselves, but I did manage to get it all here. And that's when I loaded them into the garage to get the first look at them and see what kind of work would be required to make these things sellable.
So welcome to the garage, guys. I don't think I've filmed out here too much, but this is where I've done some bike flips and some other things in the past, but yeah, I don't think you guys have been out here, so this is kind of fun. Or maybe I've taken you out here a few times, but not really too much on video. Anyway, here's the furniture that I was able to pick up. A couple super nice dresser pieces that have some paint damage for sure, and just some little aesthetic stuff. The hardware on them is actually super nice, but like I said, a couple of the drawers on the other units are missing the hardware, and since I think I want to sell this as one whole set, I'm gonna end up probably having to remove all that hardware. Also, I got this nice shelf, which is part of the set as well. Again, some paint coming off there, so I'm probably gonna have to use some stripper to get that all off. Like, I'm trying to look at this. Most of the stuff can just be sanded down and painted over, but for stuff like this, I think even when I sand it, I'm gonna end up seeing those transition marks, and it's just not gonna be worth it. So I think what we're gonna have to end up doing is stripping down the entire shelf there, for example. Who knows? I might strip down all of it. I really don't know what I'm doing yet, and again, I haven't done any of this particular stuff so much. I've done some body work in the past on certain automobiles and things of that nature, but not so much on furniture. But that being said, I'm sure it's not too difficult to figure out. Okay, these are the drawers for the third piece up here, and as you can see, the drawers are in pretty nice shape. They're like a nice oak or something. I don't actually know what this material is, but yeah, they're solid wood, which is nice. So once we get the other cabinet in here, which is still in the back of my car, then we'll be able to start work, I think. But actually, before we bring that in, I want to just take a look at the top of this one and see what kind of work I can do to get rid of some of the paint. So yeah, you guys can obviously see the paint damage that's occurred here on this piece, probably from it sitting outside in the weather. Again, this was definitely a piece set for the trash, so it wasn't really taken care of by that measure. But anyway, I'm thinking that perhaps I could sand this stuff off because it's already kind of been wet. But you can see underneath, just the quality of that wood and everything is really nice, and it's going to be really awesome when we actually get this all off. It's just a matter of taking all of the paint off, and then probably either, again, if I'm going to stain the whole thing, I got to take all the paint off. But if I'm just going to paint over it, I might be able to kind of live with, you know, leaving some of the paint on certain sides or whatever. So I got to see, but I'm going to play around with this for a little bit here and perhaps have to go out and get some stripper.
Now I'm going to be honest here, guys. I wasn't really expecting this to work. I've done a bit of sanding and a couple of woodworking projects and things in my past, but for the most part, I thought with old paint like this, I was probably going to need to use some kind of stripper, but I was pretty surprised when I put the 40 grit on my sander that it just took the paint right off. And I decided, because paint stripper is a chemical, it kind of stinks, it's kind of a pain to use, I decided I was just going to go ahead and sand this stuff down, even though it was going to take a little bit longer. Ultimately though, it wasn't a whole lot of work, and I was able to get a pretty nice looking finish at the end, but I started here by just trying it on this little section.
Now, as you guys can see, the palm sander does work. So I was just using it a little bit there on this side, took a few minutes, and definitely was able to get a lot of the paint off. Is this the right way to do it? Not necessarily. I mean, I have 40 grit on there, which is really, really low, which means that we're basically creating quite a texture on top of here, if you will. So we're gonna have to probably sand it down again using like a 120, maybe go up to 220 with it, or whatever it needs. But it does the trick. So realistically, the better thing to do, put some paint stripper on it, leave it on there for 12 to 24 hours, and then come back and just peel it off easily. But I don't think that this furniture needs that much stripping. For example, I was just looking at this side here. Although it is, you know, not the nicest cosmetic looking thing, we can probably get away with not, you know, sand or not stripping this side, just giving it a light sand, and then we can just paint right over it because it looks pretty good. However, you'll notice little stuff like this here, like this thing is probably going to mean that this entire section here has to be sanded down, not a big deal at all. Or I could probably transition it in. As you guys can see here, you can definitely do some transitional sanding. But why bother when you could just sand down the whole thing, which is kind of where I'm going with this. So that's what we're starting with here. Again, maybe not the right way to do it, but it's the way I'm going to do it, and it'll work for now, and I don't have to go out and buy a paint stripper. Okay, guys, well, I just wrapped up with the sanding, I think, for this piece. I took off the entire top layer of paint, which is looking really good. I'm going to probably hit this with a higher grit sandpaper so it gets a little bit more smooth, because right now there's definitely some marks in it from the sander. That's another con of using the sander. You can see some of them, but as we go through with a lighter grit, that will get rid of those, hopefully, and then maybe we could touch it up with some putty if we need to, if there's anything deep, but I don't think there will be. I think we'll get a pretty thick layer of paint and some primer on here, and once we get another layer of sanding paper on it, we'll be all good. On the inside here, everything looks really good in terms of paintability. Like, these have no chipping or anything. Actually, this one has a little bit there, but I might be able to just sand that clean. The idea here is to make it look like as much of a factory finish as possible. It's not going to be a factory finish because I'm not good enough to do that, I don't think, but the goal is to make it look like it's not just been painted over and there's a bunch of old marks of where the paint used to be. So I might end up just sanding these down. I'm not sure, especially since it's on the front. Maybe I will. Additionally, down here, actually, the one last spot I need to sand is this. This whole area here is going to be sanded off, I believe, just because of that issue right there. And I don't want that to show. But other than that, this piece is looking really good. So I'm excited about that. The sides should be fine. Like I said, these don't look too bad at all. So I'm excited to get going on these. That is, of course, assuming that I don't want to stain any of this and I don't want to show the wood off, because if I do, then I'm just going to end up sanding down the rest of it, which is also totally fine.
So I ended up spending the rest of this day outside, guys. And let me just tell you, it got way too dusty in the garage with the sander and sanding all this furniture. But I was able to get the hardware removed. I was able to leave all the paint on that I thought could still stay on, and I just sort of blended in around where the handles were going, as well as I was able to strip the entire tops of each of the dressers, and I did a couple of the shelves that needed work, and I felt like I had gotten it to a pretty good level here. Unfortunately, there was also a hole in one of the shelves, but that wasn't a problem. I got some Bondo out and I was able to fill that hole, and eventually I sanded it down flush so you couldn't even tell that it was there. Pretty happy with that repair. And overall, I was just having a pretty good time with these dressers. So that was about 3 hours of sanding. Then I followed it up by bagging everything up. I had to do this so then the paint, when I sprayed it on, wouldn't get on the inside of these dresser drawers, which would have kind of made them look very messy. And then it kind of got interesting. I didn't know where I was going to paint them. Initially, I thought I could paint them outside, but I realized very quickly that it was too windy and the dust and stuff coming off the trees would just be far too much, and it would leave a bunch of little damage and marks on the furniture and the finished look. So I decided instead to bring it down to the basement, and I hung up some tarps and made my own little spray room. Now, although the spray room does look like something out of a crime scene, it actually served its purpose very well and was very useful in terms of just being able to go down and do a coat at like 10 p.m. at night or whatever. I didn't have to worry about light or any of that stuff. Overall, it worked really well. Now, one thing I will say if you're thinking about doing this inside is that you definitely want to use water-based paint and things without chemicals. I've got a furnace down here that is flammable if we have other sort of paints that are flammable, and I didn't want to be mixing that, so I made sure to use all water-based chemicals and nothing that was oil-based down here. Now it's time for me to bring all the furniture downstairs, which took quite a bit of time. I managed to do it all by myself though, which was pretty impressive to be honest, and after that, it was just time to start spraying it. I set it up on a couple different places. I had them kind of all in their own corner, and then I got my spray gun out, which I had actually just purchased for this project. Mind you, I'll be able to use it for future projects and other things. I was a little bit worried that it wasn't going to work, but it turns out that it actually ended up working out quite nicely, and I was able to get the first couple coats of paint on these pieces of furniture. Again, this was quite a bit of work. It took quite a few hours. I had to be pretty thorough. I made sure to wear a mask, even though it was water-based still, so I didn't have any of those aerosols or whatever going into my mouth. And overall, again, a lot of work, but it was actually kind of fun, kind of satisfying process. Here you can see me doing the drawers, and the drawers actually turned out to be one of the nicest finishes that I got out of the entire set, and again, really happy with how these all turned out. And just like that, guys, after a few hours, the furniture was actually starting to come to life. The paint went on really nicely, and it was kind of starting to look like something that we could sell.
Okay, guys, so let's break down now what's been going on in my new paint spraying room, as I have now finished up with all 3 of the pieces. And I think they're looking pretty darn good. So, for those of you guys who are wondering, what I did was I basically used this Behr Ultra Scuff Defense paint initially, and I did 2 coats on each piece. And I was just going to leave it there. This is supposed to be a pretty good paint. I was talking to the people at the Home Depot that I went to, and they like this one. But I decided after watching a few videos that that wasn't going to be enough, especially because, you know, I wanted this to be a durable finish. I wanted it to be some people can move it without scratching it. So I decided to put on some Varathane on top of it, which is like a polyurethane. And this basically is just a clear coat that goes on top and just adds some protection to the paint underneath. I ended up putting on 3 coats of this stuff. It ended up taking a lot longer than I was hoping. But with that being said, we now have a nice finish on all of our pieces. So yeah, let's talk about this for a second. I've got all the drawers done up here. I've got the old hardware removed, obviously, and the new stuff is going to be ready to be put on here in a bit. Obviously, I had to bag them all because I was spraying them, so that took quite a bit of time. There are still some cracks like this one here, which I really could have filled, but I didn't. So that's just got to be, we'll call it character on these pieces. So again, they're not going to bring in insane money as if they were new because they're not. They have things like that. But for the most part, if you look at most of these doors, I think the spray finish turned out really nice. And I'm glad that I did that because it saved a ton of time and made for a super nice finish. Okay, dresser number 1, I'm super happy with, except for the fact that the top turned out a little bit more coarse than I would have liked. Definitely could have smoothed that out a bit. I guess I just didn't spend enough time sanding it, even with the 3 coats. I actually did 4 coats of urethane on the tops. It just wasn't enough. So yeah, I don't know. It's not ideal. I could sand it all down and start over, but I just don't have the time to do it. So I'll have to keep that in mind though for the next project that I do. If and when that happens, you know, we need to make sure that we get that a little bit more smooth. But for now, I'm just going to end up selling them as is. Also, this one has a wee crack there. I thought it was initially just a mark, but I painted over it a few times and it turns out it's a crack. And I definitely could have filled that. But again, we're kind of too far into things here. And I don't think you notice it too much. I don't know. Whatever it is, what it is. It's character. And then we've got the shelf here, which I think turned out really well as well. I still have one little thing back here where I need to just tape that down, or not tape it. I need to glue it down and then that will be done. Also on this side, same deal. Need to just glue that corner down. So yeah, other than that, I'm really happy with it. And I think we're going to be able to make some good money on it. My guess right now, I've been looking at some dressers and most of them are going for about $200 for like non-finished ones. This is for like crappy dressers, are like 200 bucks. So I'm thinking that this one's probably worth about $300 as is in this condition, at least. I'm thinking that this one's probably worth another $200 at least. And I'm thinking that this shelf is probably another 100 to 200 on top, maybe 150 bucks. So when you put that all together, I think we have a $650 set here easily. Now, if you guys are wondering for a little cost breakdown, which I figure we might as well do right now, I spent $22 on each can of this. I bought 2 cans of this, but I only ended up using 1. So I have a whole other can that I can save for another project. Unfortunately, you can't return them because I did pre-tint them. But other than that, we spent $22 on that. We spent $40 on this Varathane can, but I only ended up using like a third of it. So I still can do, you know, 2 or 3 more projects, at least 6 more pieces with this can. So realistically, it was about $15 out of that $40 that we probably used. I did buy a $200 paint sprayer, but I'm going to be able to save that for more projects. So I'm not going to count that here today. Just because, again, it's kind of just a tool that I can have for anything. And I'm working on a couple other projects right now, actually, that I'll need it for. So I'm not going to count that as part of this cost. I also did spend $70 on all the hardware for everything that's going to go in here. Actually, it wasn't quite 70. I think it was like 60, 50, 60. We'll call it 70. I don't know what it was exactly, but it was close to that. Let's basically say that I think it was 60 because I bought some other stuff as well when I was at IKEA that was part of some other stuff for the office. I bought a cable tray for my room. You guys will see that in another video. But anyway, that's totally unrelated. We did spend a little bit on hardware though. So we're probably about, I don't know, $100, $120 in material here. Realistically, I spent like $200 because I bought like too much paint and I bought all these extra supplies I didn't need. But I'm going to be able to use that all for the next project. So I'm not going to count that in this cost for these guys here. Okay, so with that said, I'm now going to go ahead and unbag all of these guys. Finally, by the way, this ended up taking... I'm on like day 3 now working on this. So the first day was all sanding. The second day was painting. The third day was urethaning everything. And now basically, I guess this is technically day 4. This is the morning of day 4. I'm going to put all the hardware back on it. But those were not full days. That was just a few hours each day. So yeah, I don't think we're going to do too badly on this. Okay, it's hardware time. Let me go ahead and put that on. We'll put it back in the drawers. We'll see how they all look. And then we'll get them staged somewhere nice and hopefully be able to take some really good pictures of it. And I think that will help us sell this here. Well, guys, I'll be amazed. This actually looks killer. That's what the first 3 drawers in, and I just wanted to put them in to show you guys. I'm not going to put these ones in because I had to carry them up separately. I'll still put the hardware on them right now. But yeah, I mean, that looks like a really expensive piece of furniture, and that's what you can do with a piece of furniture from the side of the road, I guess. So I'm very excited about this. Wow. Yeah, it turned out really good. I'm glad I went with the black for the handles there, and they fit in the existing holes, which is perfect. I'm just very excited to get these guys listed now. But wow. Yeah, I think we're gonna make some good money on this, guys. Okay, and about 20 minutes later, all the hardware is now finally on. That actually took longer than I thought because some of the holes weren't drilled correctly, so I had to kind of angle some new holes in. Anyway, we eventually got it all good, and as you can see, they all fit perfectly. We don't have any holes showing, which is the goal there, and so yeah, it all turned out really good. So again, not gonna put it in just yet. I'm gonna wait till I stage it all, probably upstairs somewhere nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably have to move these guys now, which isn't exactly fun, especially now that they're painted. I did buy some moving blankets just so I could make sure that I wouldn't hit them on anything. I guess that was technically another expense that I didn't really count, but again, we can use those again afterwards, so it's not necessarily the cost of this project. Anyway, I'm excited. I'm hoping that that's gonna work, so I might just go ahead and try to move a couple of these pieces now.
And here the pieces are upstairs, guys. I brought them into one of the rooms, and I had them all set up with the hardware. They were looking really good, and I thought that I was done, and I was just gonna go ahead and list them on Kijiji. However, it was also at this time when I noticed that we had a couple problems. A lot of the dents and dings and little nicks in the furniture were showing in the light, which wasn't great. I could also see lines on the furniture of where the spray gun had kind of gone over, and I hadn't done a good job of sort of mixing up the spray pattern to sort of alleviate that issue. As well as one of the major issues, which I kind of mentioned earlier, was that the top of these pieces of furniture were very textured, and I realized quickly, like, if you set, you know, a piece of clothing down on it, it's kind of gonna catch all along the top of the dresser, and it just wasn't gonna work. I had a feeling that from afar people were gonna like these listings. They were gonna come and see the items and then immediately turn away when they felt them and actually saw them up close. So I decided it was time for round 2. I took them outside, I sanded down the tops to make them super smooth. I went ahead with some wood fill, and I filled all of the little issues, and I went down and brought them down for another coat of spraying. Now, I didn't film any of this. This all was just like an extra day of work on top of what we had already done. But at the end of this, we had some really nice looking pieces of furniture, and I was really satisfied with the result and ready to list them all on Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace. So the listing process was pretty smooth, as you'd expect. It's kind of just like listing anything on the internet. I just put the title of the furniture, the make of it, and I did a quick little description about how these were solid wood, kind of restored pieces. I went ahead and I added in the size of each of the pieces. I think this is really important because for anybody shopping online, they're not going to know if it's going to fit in their house without the dimensions. So if you're going to do a project like this, definitely make sure to put your dimensions in your listing. I looked at all the comparables. I thought that I had a pretty good set, and I decided on the first day to list these all on Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji for $700 for the entire set. Now, this is where maybe, just maybe, I overestimated the demand for these items and how much I'd be able to get for them. Okay, listen, let's just say I'm recording this video 2 weeks after I listed them, and I really wanted to wait until they sold to make this video. But here we are. So I had them listed at $700 for a few days, no interest whatsoever. Dropped them to $650 for a few days, no interest. Dropped them down to $600. I finally had my first piece of interest, which was a lady that had offered me $500 for the entire set. And at the time I thought, it's probably a good idea if I take this. So I kind of accepted her offer, but kind of was leaving myself some room to negotiate. And unfortunately, she ended up walking away from the deal. I eventually ended up dropping the price down to that $500 mark that she had initially offered after that. And I was hoping for some really big sort of attention to these listings or somebody buying them. I had relisted them as a fresh listing when I had done that, and again, unfortunately, there was some interest, but nobody was really biting. And I was really curious at this point because it's like I had put this work in, I thought these were nice looking pieces of furniture, and I just couldn't figure out why they weren't selling. That's when I realized that there were probably a couple things going on here which was really playing against me in this entire journey. The first thing was that I had put quite a bit of time and money into these items, so I wanted quite a bit of money out of them just to at least make it worth my time. Which is fine, I actually still don't believe that the numbers I had set were unrealistic. However, the time of year to sell furniture is actually terrible. Again, I'm used to selling in e-commerce where fourth quarter is kind of the best time to sell anything online because everybody buys everything at this time and we're able to move tons of product. However, in the furniture industry, not so much. Turns out not a whole lot of people are moving right before Christmas, not a lot of people are wanting to redecorate their space before Christmas, and overall we just end up with not a lot of people looking for furniture. The third thing that I had noticed is that a lot of pieces of furniture on these places were just selling individually versus as a set, and I think maybe the price for the set was a little intimidating. What I forgot to mention was that I had actually had lots of interest in individual pieces of furniture that on their own, but not for the set. So people were messaging me asking if they could just buy the shelf or just buy a dresser, and I thought at the time that that would totally take away the value of this set, so I didn't want to sell to them. But about a week and a half in, I decided to totally change my approach, and I decided to list each piece of furniture individually. Now here's where we had to add actually another piece of furniture into the story. So throughout this week, again, I was pretty excited. I wanted to try the paint sprayer again. I wanted to try to do another piece. So I went out to Value Village, just sourcing regular inventory, and I ran into a little table that I thought I would also be able to add to the collection. Now it was a nice little table. It was $12, and it was kind of like a dark wood stain finish that was all chipping away. I brought it home, sanded off the old stain, and sure enough, it was looking like it would be just a raw piece of furniture. Brought it down, painted it, and that actually ended up turning out really nice. So about a day or two after I picked up that table, I had it done, and I was ready to actually sell that one as well. So I ended up listing that one as well as the other 3 pieces of furniture on my page now for their own individual prices. And finally, we had somebody that was willing to purchase one of them. And so guys, after 2 weeks, I can confirm that I finally just made the sale of a shelf for $100 on Kijiji, which was pretty exciting. I sold 1 piece, which I mean is not the best. It's not even gonna cover my costs on the entire lot. I should mention too, the second table didn't require any extra costs because I already had everything that I needed to do it. But yeah, that's where we're at right now. And again, I'm very curious to see if the rest of them will sell, what they'll sell for, and how long it's gonna take to move these items. I would just keep them until the spring, for example, when there's a lot of cleaning and people are changing around their houses, and I think they'd sell really quickly. But I also think that I don't want to sacrifice that kind of space to store these for that long. So I'm gonna see if I can still sell them, but that's where we're at right now. Anyway guys, with that, that's kind of the story of my first time trying to flip furniture. I have sold my first piece. I really wanted to wait and make this video after I had sold all of it, but it kind of turns out that I don't think we're gonna have time to wait any longer, and I just wanted to put this out there. If you guys are interested in this journey though and think I should do another piece, for example, I could definitely go through and document more of the process as well. This was kind of more of an overview, but I could definitely get in depth about it and do a couple more, maybe just drive arounds looking for furniture. We can definitely do that in the future, and again, I can maybe show you guys how we can make some more money with this hustle, especially maybe more towards the spring. I should also mention, for anybody that's out there and says that this doesn't seem like it would be possible because who's just gonna give this kind of stuff away, I've been driving around since I picked up these pieces, and I've probably seen another 4 to 5 individual bedroom sets, dressers, whatever it might be, tables, bed sets, whatever it is. There's been tons of furniture that I've run into just sitting on the side of the road. I haven't grabbed it because I want to sell this stuff first, but there's plenty of free stuff out there. Anyway, let me know what you guys think. Was this a good use of my time? Was this a good hustle to try? Are there other hustles that you want to see me try? I'm definitely going to spend some more time in this space. I think I really enjoyed it, and overall I think there's a lot of money to be made, and it's just going to be something casual that I can do on the weekend or on the sides. But for now, this is where we're at in the furniture story, and we're going to end it here. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to go on below. Again, leave a like. Let me know what you think of this whole idea down below in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I will see you guys all in the next video.